Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
My name again is Xavier Herit. I'm the brand ambassador for Grand Marnier in the United States. The Campari Academy and Grand Marnier are very excited to partner with the Portland Cocktail Week on this educational programming. For this special edition, I would like to welcome Jared Sadoian. Did I pronounce right your last name, Jared?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Nice flair.
With a French accent, who is based in Boston. Jared is going to share today his tips and recommendations on how to work, clean, and polish behind the bar while making drinks, because this is an art and it requires a lot of system and techniques. How are you today, Jared?
I'm
good.
I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, I gotta say, thank you for having me, and thank you for Campari's support, and specifically Grand Marnier as well. It's really really been nice seeing what all of the brands and Campari especially has been doing since so many of us have been out of work.
Thank you so much. It's we have an exciting portfolio, and I'm glad to see that today actually we're going to be able to also sample some of the drinks with some of the liquor from the Campari portfolio, including Grand Marnier. One thing I'd like to know, Jared, can you tell us more about your career and what made you go into this industry?
Yeah, so I actually didn't work in restaurants or bars at all until I was almost graduated from college. When I got a part-time job as a bar back at a place called Eastern Standard, where I certainly had to work very, very hard, and it was a very steep learning curve, but it was one of those things where I just sort of caught the bug from there. So I worked in New York actually for about a year in corporate America before I finally decided that I wanted a bit of a change of pace. And so I took the jump, this is about 10 years ago now, to full-time bartending. And so since then, I've gone from bartending and making drinks to bartending and getting to look after programs and mentor and train staff. And it's been a really gratifying experience so far. So currently you can find me at a bar called the Hawthorne, which is next door to Eastern Standard inside the Hotel Commonwealth in the heart of Boston.
Excellent. Well, I can see that you've been a lover of cocktails your entire life. Is what made you decide to go into this industry, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't get into cocktails until it was like a roommate and myself in college. It's funny, it was actually Campari. He collected vintage posters, and so he bought a Campari poster, and we said, well, we don't know what this is. Mind you, this was 2008, 2007, 2008. And so we saw it at a store, and we said, oh, it's that thing from the poster, right? Let's buy it. And so we bought it and we tried it. And like a lot of people, the first time you taste Campari is not exactly well, let's say it was like a surprising moment, right? So it took us a little while to get through that bottle, but that sort of started, figuring out what to do with that bottle, different cocktails you can make with it, and then others. And so that's sort of where I sort of developed a real interest in cocktails and drink making, and then from there transitioned into bartending.
That sounds an excited career, and I'm super also excited to see you here. And what a beautiful background with your bottles. And I already love your bar at home. Before we start to follow Jared's presentation, I would like to bring a little refresher about Grand Marnier. We know Grand Marnier has been around for a long time, and sometimes people forgot what is inside. So we're going just to talk very briefly for about a few minutes about Grand Marnier. One thing why I'm very excited about to work with Grand Marnier, as you may hear, I have a strong French accent. So I grew up my entire life with Grand Marnier because I lived in Paris, grew up in Paris my entire childhood. And my parents always have a bottle of Grand Marnier in their house, and my grandma always has a bottle of Grand Marnier in the house too. So it's been around for a while. But so it's part of my heart. Grand Marnier as a brand is a brand rich with rich history and heritage. The distillery was first created in 1827. It was called L'Apostole Distillery. And at this time, they were making only fruit liqueurs. like crème of cassis, crème de pêche, apricot. The fruit liqueurs were really, really popular in the suburb of Paris. Then after, I think we have, it's a short story because I can speak for hours about this story of Grand Marnier. But what is interesting is when Louis Alexandre joined the team, Louis Alexandre Marnier actually helped to develop the first Grand Marnier that was created in 1880. So it's been around for a long time. Grand Marnier Cordon Rouge was created in 1880. And guess what? Since 1880, this is the same recipe, this is the same formula, and this is the same bottle shape. So there is a savoir-faire and a heritage behind it. As we can see, one little tip about the shape of this bottle of Grand Marnier Cordon Rouge, it's the shape, actually I have to get it right in the front, the shape is the shape of a cognac pot still. So this is actually a very iconic bottle that now every time you go behind a bar, you're gonna see in the background very clearly the bottle in the background. So we really, really preserve this authentic design of the bottle. That's for the design. One thing also I like to remind everyone, it's Grand Marnier, of course, is an orange liqueur. It's part of the Curaçao family because it's a blend of orange liqueur and cognac. This is what makes Grand Marnier a premium orange liqueur. So that's very important to know. It's blending cognac and orange liqueur in the 1880 was pretty boldly. We didn't see much Curaçao with this expensive product. A few facts regarding Grand Marnier. You should know that in a bottle of Grand Marnier Cordon Rouge, we have 51% of cognac. It's also 80 proof. So what does it mean? Because it's 80 proof and 51% of cognac, you can enjoy Grand Marnier. Grand Marnier is versatile. So you can enjoy Grand Marnier neat on the rocks, as a modifier on a Margarita. By the way, happy Cinco de Mayo, everyone. And also as a base spirit, because in the bottle of Grand Marnier, you have two ingredients. You have a cognac and you have an orange liqueur. So we have some classic drinks like a play on the French 75, what we call the Grand 75. And we use 1.5 ounce of Grand Marnier Cordon Rouge. And it works very well as well. So there's so many ways we can enjoy Grand Marnier, which I think is really exciting. A last thing I'd like to add about this little story, because it's not just about Grand Marnier, it's more about Jared and his presentation today. We have a new addition to the portfolio of Grand Marnier. We have to understand that we have 4 different Grand Marniers in a portfolio. The Cordon Rouge is the most popular one, but we have also the Louis Alexandre Grand Marnier, which has been added to a portfolio last year, which is more like a cognac base, where we are inside 82% of VSOP cognac. So this one is also very excited to try, to enjoy it on its own. And also there's such a diversity into the portfolio. We can go some higher cuvées with older cognac. And what's what really makes Grand Marnier very special, because we can be anywhere from a very casual place to a very high-end establishment, a bar or hotels with a Centenaire, or the 1880, which are more some like higher marks from Grand Marnier. Very excited also as well. Anyway, enough about did you have a chance to try all of them, Jared?
Yeah, I've had the opportunity. Our bar also has, we have an older bottle of the Cinquantenaire, with a very beautiful hand-painted Grand Marnier bottle that's just gorgeous to look at. And obviously the liquid inside is great too, so.
It's the Cinquantenaire as a collector now. You should make sure to keep it. It's gonna get value. Anyway, Jared, this is all yours now. Please let's welcome Jared. And I'll be here to, of course, if anyone has any questions, I'll be here to share the questions to Jared while he's doing his presentation. So feel free to send any questions you may have, everyone. Thank you.
Xavier they're looking at the comment feed. So thank you guys all for tuning in. I see a lot of activity already, which is super cool. Sorry that we can't be here in person. It's very strange to be presenting in this space. This is weird, but also literally talking to a Google Docs file that has my notes instead of a room full of friendly faces. So hopefully we get to do that soon. But for now, I'm just so thankful that we have an opportunity to be together virtually and to be able to share a drink sort of in a number of different ways. So just a real shout out to Portland Cocktail Week and Campari and the Campari community for setting up these opportunities for us. I think it's really great. So cleanliness and polish in drink making. When I I wrote the title for that presentation, the thing that I didn't realize was that it would mostly be publicized in a written form and not spoken. So just a couple disclaimers. If you were here to hear about polishing glassware, we're not really going to do that. So you can log off. And if you were here because you really enjoy Polish sausages or Polish culture in general, I don't know too much about that. So we're not going to be covering those topics. So with that, let's get started, right? So when I say cleanliness and polish in drink making, I'm really talking about a few key concepts, and they all sort of really revolve around what I think bartending is, which is taking care of guests, right? We make drinks as a way to take care of guests, right? So when I think about bartending cleanly, a lot of that has to do with our guest perception, right? And in this current environment, I think now more than ever, as we go back to work eventually, and people start filtering back into our places of work, I think that guest perception is going to be vitally important to making our guests feel comfortable again in these environments. So I think that clean bartending, one, I think makes you look much more knowledgeable about what you're doing, even if you might not know 100% of it. And I think it can really give a sense of confidence in your guests towards you, the bartender, right? Which can translate into a number of other benefits, whether it's them trusting you to recommend a new spirit to try or a different cocktail, so on and so forth, right? So this is not about flair per se, right? I'm terrible at it, and I can't flip a shaker tin to save my life. There are many aspects of bar flair that can be sort of compartmentalized and sort of made like micro, that can be very useful, that can add just a little bit of extra polish to your drink making, but it's not about like how to juggle bottles and whatnot, right? And much like what we train at the Hawthorne, my style of drink making is fairly understated in its approach, and I try not to do anything totally outlandish, right? Now, when thinking about like the guest perception, right, we want to always be thinking through the lens of what a guest might see, right? That might be obvious to some of y'all. I know where many of you work, and more importantly, it's thinking about the guest perception not from the seat like directly in front of you, but from like the guests that are sitting like at the end of the bar over there, the guests that might be behind you if you're working at an island bar. Guests can be in any number of different places, and so you can be seen in lots of different viewpoints. So one topic that we discuss a lot at our bar is what we call line of sight. So especially true, like my favorite place to sit at a bar is right on the end. You can see all the way down like the length of the bar, right? Both the bar top, as well as what their well looks like, what the floor looks like, how everyone's standing and moving around, and I find it so fascinating. And so we take a lot of time to make sure that line of sight is just as clean as our bar top, right? And then the other thing too is to think about through all of these different steps of drink making, think about how to consolidate your movement, right? Every motion you make behind the bar must be deliberate and must be with purpose, okay? When I started in a restaurant in Cambridge called Craigie on Main, kind of a more upscale like French bistro, we were taught this idea of like, if you're going to the dish pit, you were going to make sure you have a tray of something to take back there. And then when you were back there, you weren't going to go back out to the floor unless you had a tray of something that needed to go back out to the floor, right? You want to save and conserve your movements as much as you can. I've found that bartending cleanly doesn't necessarily mean that you're bartending faster, but in many ways, if you are doing it smartly and conserving your motions in a way that will save you a lot of time, you can move a little bit slower and a little bit more deliberately, and you can still make drinks as fast, or in many cases faster than someone else who might be moving very quickly but doing things multiple times, or going back to the same closet to get the same things out, right? So having a little bit of forethought, I think is really important, right? So we're going to get started, right? We are going to make a couple drinks today in light of Cinco de Mayo. One of them is going to be a Cadillac Margarita with Espolón Reposado and Grand Marnier. And then we're also going to make a Boulevardier with wild turkey, right? One shaken, one stirred. And we're going to talk a little bit about those steps as I'm moving through this, right? So let's start with just like the bottles themselves and their layout, right? When you're setting up your station, that prior planning is going to be really important for ensuring that you're able to operate really cleanly, okay? So, I mean, a really obvious one is like if you're using speed pours, when the label's facing out, and I'm right-handed, label's facing out, right, towards the guest, my speed pour is facing up and going this way, right? In general, you want to make sure your speed pours are clean, obviously. Running them through a dishwasher will eventually degrade them. We usually just soak them in hot water when we can, and we try to replace them often. This way, when you're pouring, the label will be facing out, and your guests will be able to see exactly what you're doing, right? If you're working off of a back bar, obviously everything facing out, looking nice, clean and polished. A few of my bottles are a little dusty. And that way, we don't have to think about that aspect of the motion, right? So you want to try to get as much of this stuff out of the way in advance as you can. Now, when we're pulling bottles, either from a well or from a back bar, there are, any number of different ways you can do it. I'm going to show you the way that we teach our staff to do it at the Hawthorne. And certainly know that in certain bar setups and different situations, these types of motions may not be feasible, or in some cases may not be the best way to go about it. So think about this as just a way to kind of look a little deeper into how you go about doing things behind the bar, right? So we'll start with that margarita, right? And we're going to use a glass. We shake glass on tin at the Hawthorne. There's a number of reasons why we do that, and I'll talk about that a little later. But one thing that I like about it is that our guests can see all the different liquids going into the glass and mixing and changing colors and changing textures, and it's just a really nice way to go, right? So maybe I have some guests sitting in front of me here at the bar. If I'm operating out of a well, I am certainly facing them. If I'm pulling like the lime juice, for example, the bottle is facing them. I didn't have to turn around or do anything like that, right? But if I were to grab that Espolón, that Grand Marnier that are behind me, if I think about the way that my home bar is set up, right? Like I have the wall here, so there's nobody there. I have guests that may be seated in front of me, and then it kind of goes on down that way, and then it can sort of, let's imagine it sort of curves around, and maybe there's someone sitting over there. I don't want to turn this way to grab that bottle, right? Most of the guests that may be sitting in my bar, assuming my home bar is full, are just going to see my back, and that's no fun, right? I want to try to stay facing forward as much as I can. So I'm actually going to just think about it and turn the other way and grab the bottle that way, right? And that way it gives you another chance to kind of take a look around while you're doing this, right? So we're gonna build this from the top down. I know a lot of you do it the other way, but I'll start with the Espolón Reposado, right? So if I have my glass set up here, if I take a step back, I'm going to grab the bottle with my non-dominant hand, the hand that I'm not going to be holding it with. And as I'm turning it around, I'm going to put it into the hand that I'm going to hold it with in exactly the right position so that when I'm pouring, the label is facing out, right? This is It's pretty obvious, but it's like all one motion. And so that way I don't have to think too hard about where I'm putting my hand, like to grab the bottle itself. I just take a step back, I grab the bottle, and I place it in my hand the right way. As I'm taking this off, I'm also twisting the cap off and putting it away. So when I come down towards the drink, I'm already just grabbing my jigger to go ahead and measure, right? Label facing out. It's easier to pour from your bottles when you're holding it at the base than it is when you're like grabbing like the neck, right? This will hurt your wrist. It's less control. So we're going to be holding from the bottom. And then I like to keep my hands on the cork or the screw cap or whatever when I'm measuring, so that I can quickly replace that as I'm going through that motion of putting it back on the shelf, right?
So Jared, sorry to interrupt you. If I understand, you treat your bottle of liquor like you treat a bottle of wine.
Yeah, exactly.
If I understand, always shrink the label. So it's like a whole service, like a whole ritual.
It is, yeah, and I mean, like learning, like from the wine side especially, like that is so vitally important that you know the guests can see the label of the bottle if they've asked for it to verify that it's correct, right? But in this case, you have someone who may be sitting right in front of you, and whether it's that drink is for them or not, this is part of the experience, right? They get to see these different labels, many of these labels with interesting art and interesting stories behind them as well. And that can be a point of conversation that you can eventually have with someone that says like, oh, I've never seen that before, right? If you're got bottles turned around or the thing on the side and no one can really see what's going on, then they're not going to have any reason to ask, right? Now, with bottle pulls as well, one of the interesting things is the question I get a lot is about screw caps, right? Screw caps are like so awkward. If I pull this bottle down and then you're like, and like twist, and like take the cap off, and then you have your bottle right, and like it's a slow process. It looks kind of clunky, right? When we pull bottles off, the thing is that most of these bottles, like I shouldn't make up a random percentage here, but I will. Like 95% of these bottles that I've encountered all have very similar threading on the caps. So if I'm holding like this bottle of Aperol, for example, appropriately for pouring this way, if I have my hands out like this, if I twist everything together like that, and I hold it close here, and I start to unscrew, by the time I get all the way back out, that cap comes right off, and it's already where I need it to be. Okay?
That's impressive. I never tried before. I will definitely try after this presentation.
Yeah, and then you sort of just do the opposite to come off, right? I mean, there's actually don't have very many screw cap bottles back here, but I mean, Campari would be the same way. If I'm holding it out like this, I just push it in like that, and then the cap comes right off. And then you just do it in the opposite direction. To put the cap back on securely, right? You don't want someone else grabbing it and popping the top off, right? So much the same way, if I'm reaching back, grabbing that bottle of Aperol, I'm putting it in my hand the right way and coming up and twisting in so that I can twist that off and go straight to measure, right? Awesome. So we'll start with our Cadillac Margarita. We're going to use Espolón Reposado. And so we'll grab that off the shelf. And we're ready to measure. When I'm measuring, the one thing, and sort of one of my many obsessive pet peeves about drink making is I never want the bottle or the speed pour to touch the jigger, and I never want the jigger or whatever measuring device you're using to touch the glass, right? This concept of like in plumbing, it's called an air gap, and you want to leave a little space so that there is sort of an area where something can't like back up, right? And when I'm thinking about things that are dirty or sticky or potentially contaminated, I don't want to then put this in there and then have this touch it, and then the cork goes back on and it goes back on the shelf. So I'm going to measure my 2 ounces of Espolón Reposado. It's 4 o'clock somewhere, so I think I deserve this. And I'm measuring all the way up to the top, like that meniscus, and then I'm going to measure in, right? Now, I did this very slowly. You can certainly move a lot faster. When you are holding a bottle from the bottom, it is actually quite easy to control that flow. And you'll find that some of these brands have bottles that are better suited for this than others, right? And then we'll park that back up on the shelf. Now, when we're thinking about speed pourers, we operate a little bit faster, right? A speed pourer bottle, we don't want to pick up from our well like that. Like, I'm not going to grab the bottle like this. And if I grab the bottle like this and I invert it like that, this is putting a lot of strain on my shoulder. Xavier, it's stretching my suit jacket out, which is terrible. I don't want that either, but it's also going to put like a lot of strain on your wrist too, especially if you're holding a very heavy bottle for, you know, a bunch of 8 counts, like a lot of 2-ounce measures, right? So I don't want to do that. So when we grab from the well, it'll be down low, and I'm going to have my hand out like this, down this way. So I know some people that do it in between their index and middle, some that do it between the middle and ring finger. You'll find one that's sort of comfortable for you. But what we want to do is we actually are just going to invert the whole thing upside down, right? Like this. Now see, my hand now is in like a much more neutral position. And in fact, my entire posture becomes a little bit more centered and pretty compact. Having that sort of compact stance, if you're working very closely to someone else, can be helpful. It gives you this sort of illusion of being sort of very, very, very deliberate with your motions, right? If I have this here, I'm going to measure from the inside, and I'm measuring this way. So my elbows aren't out, right? I'm just kind of, I got everything in, and I'm in a pretty comfortable space here, right? And we're going to get all the way up to the top of that glass, and then I'll stop my pour and measure, right? So when I do that, the other thing to keep in mind is that learning how to do that inverted pour is tough, right? Because you say these bottles are very heavy, and I'm essentially using like 2 fingers to try to support the weight of this thing as I'm turning it upside down, right? And what I like to explain is that you're not really forcing it at all. What you're doing is you're using the weight of the bottle and some inertia to your advantage. When we pull up, and actually, if you can switch to that side view, I think it's already on, right? When I pick this bottle up from down low, I'm pulling it up with some amount of speed, right? And that amount of force is going to get the bottle moving. And when an object is in motion, it will tend to remain in motion, right? Science, right? I knew I could sneak that in somehow. And while it's going up, the only force I'm really applying is going this way. So I'm going to push the bottle this way, which is going to flip the whole thing upside down. And then all I have to do is just get it centered, right? So even a bottle like Grand Marnier, I know this probably doesn't fit in many wells, but if it did, it's the same thing. You're just you're pulling up and flipping it upside down like that, right? And then in the opposite direction, you're sort of letting gravity do the work. You move it to one side and it'll naturally fall as you put it back down. So it's just a quick little inversion there, right? Now, while we're measuring, so I'm going to do like 2 ounces of water, for example, right? So I pick up and I invert, I'm measuring off, and then I'm just going to slowly stop the flow there, up at the top, and then pour away my 2 ounces, right? I've done a couple things here. So one of my good friends, Josh Seberg in Norfolk, Virginia, he had a really good point about this whole idea of what we said was technique tunnel vision. So a lot of people are so focused on that, right? So I'm like inverted, here I am measuring, and I get it perfect, and I pour, and everything's great. But I've kept my head down the entire time when, for a good chunk of that 8 count to get to 2 ounces, I didn't need to be looking at this. I had this set, right? And I know that in 4 seconds or whatever, I'm gonna have to come back to it, right? And that's an opportunity for you to take that quick look around, make eye contact with someone who hasn't been greeted yet, while still not slowing down your drink making at all, right? So that's certainly one. And then another way to sort of consolidate your motions that I like to use is this whole idea of holdback. So these jiggers, right, the sort of tall, very vertical ones, they have a lot of holdback. So it actually takes a little bit, and you can see there's still drops coming out of this. While I'm holding this down to let all that liquid flow out, I'm grabbing my next bottle from the well, right? So let's finish this margarita off, right? We're gonna do 3/4 of an ounce of Grand Marnier Cordon Rouge. So I measure my 3/4 of an ounce measure here. A little harder to do that sort of look up when you're operating with a bottle, because very small changes in your wrist will make it move quite a bit more. And then we'll do some fresh lime juice. So we'll do 3/4 of an ounce there as well. I'll put that in. Great. And now we're ready to go, right? That's an obvious point, but always, like, if you're thinking about bartending cleanly, one really important piece is, like, put your stuff back in the place where they came from. You don't want to hang on to bottles. It's just going to slow either yourself down, or it's probably going to slow everybody else around you down as they're looking for the things that you have inadvertently hidden, right? Okay, so now we need to shake, or potentially we need to stir a drink. We like to shake or stir by standing in one place. When we shake at the Hawthorne, we try as best we can to shake one drink at a time. There's a number of reasons why we don't like to double shake that are sort of outside of the scope of bartending cleanly, but it is an opportunity for some things to go wrong, where something can come loose or start spilling or whatnot, and you don't have both hands to control it. So we like to shake one drink at a time, right? Now, shaking in and of itself it tends to be a pretty messy procedure, and I think that there is no one right way to shake. I think everyone, based on how long your arms are, like where your elbows are in relation to this whole thing, like what your shoulders look like, if you're like super muscular or not, can affect how you shake. And so it's just about finding that rhythm that's going to sound pleasant and get your drink cold, diluted, and properly aerated in a reasonably short amount of time, right? So I'm going to get my glass ready, and I'm actually let's pretend like this like mat with the coasters on it is where, like, I'm going to be serving a guest. I'm actually going to keep it on my side of the rail. We will finish a drink, and then we will actually physically serve it to a guest, right? Instead of the other way around of finishing it, in front of a guest. A number of reasons is that, like, you may have a garnish that you want to put on it. You may be topping it with soda or champagne or whatever. And if you have something that's on the guest side, it's theirs, right? You finish straining your drink, and then what do? They pick it up and they try to drink it, and you're like, wait, hang on, and then you put your twist or whatever. So we keep things on our side, and then it gives us that signaling to the guests that we're putting this down for them to have, right? So I have some ice that I'm going to load into my glass. And then I'm going to put some ice into my shaker tin. I don't actually have a scoop at home, so I'm using these tongs, which is nice because I can actually place the ice cubes in the shaker without splashing, which is great. And then
what kind of ice are you using, Jared? Just
these are yeah, they are square cubes, and no, I don't have a cold draft machine at home. I don't have that kind of money or patience. But they're the Tobolo, the silicone square cube trays. I have 4 of them, and we just fill them up and They make really nice square cubes. They're not perfectly clear, but who really cares?
It's meant to be shaken, so it's totally
yeah,
fine.
exactly. So I'm going to close my tin here, and then I'm just going to shake. I usually try to shake to the side. I'm not going to turn this way because I've got guests behind me. I'm going to turn this way. While I'm shaking, again, a chance for you to survey your bar and think about, like in these 15 seconds, you're thinking about what the next 3 things are that you're going to do after you're done with this, right? Okay, so I have my tin. We let a little bit of that hold back kind of come out, and then I'm going to put my dirty glass away because I don't want anyone to see it. So we'll go like directly into the rinse sink, right? Then while the drink is still live, we're going to strain. Now you're like, oh my God, there's so many different options. What the hell am I going to use to strain? If you're using a traditional Hawthorne strainer, the one thing that I see a lot is this like super closed gate, right? Where the metal is kind of touching like the bottom there, and then you see that the stream just comes out all over the place, right? So we keep an open gate. This lets us control the flow, and it comes out in just one piece. And if we need to really get all those ice chips out, we'll double strain, and that will let us place the flow of this in a very precise place. So I don't want to strain directly over these ice cubes because it's going to splash everywhere, right? Especially if my cold draft cubes have divots. So if I put this right on the side, I can actually just go right on the side of them and get all of that in, right? And then I'm going to put this away because I don't want anyone to see that. And I have my drink here, okay? So I'm straining over my side of the bar, not over the guest side. That lets me then properly garnish this drink. So I'm going to put like a little lime wheel on top. When we're garnishing, we think about the orientation of the cocktail. So much the same way that like at a fancy restaurant, like your food, you have the plate that you're on, like the chef has meant it to be in a certain orientation, right? And in much the same way, like your drinks, in many cases, will have a certain orientation too. And you want it to look as best as possible when you're putting it in front of your guests. So you make it sort of in the opposite direction. I want the guest to see an ice cube with the lime wheel sort of like behind it, right? And then that way I can put it down directly in front of them like so, right? So you're placing things with thought. Now, the coaster that you're placing it on probably has your bar's logo on it. Make sure that that logo is facing the guest. Make sure the coaster is correctly positioned when you put it down in the first place. Every one of those little tiny things that just showing just a little bit of thought here and a little bit of thought there really will change the overall experience that a guest will have in your space, whether directly because they're noticing that, or more commonly, it'll just be this sort of subtle thing in the background where later they go, wow, that was really nice, and they can't really put their finger on it, right? You can also do things that are that can make you feel a little bit more comfortable in practice too. Like all of my tins have the logo facing the correct direction. If we're placing certain pieces of glassware down, those actually have an orientation. The glass's logo is, might be on the bottom. So for a Boulevardier, for example, I'm going to serve that up, and we have the Shot Zwiesel logo at the bottom of the glass, and I'm going to place that glass with the logo facing the guest, right? That they pick that drink up, they can see like, oh, I know where I can find this glass or whatnot. It's just these really little things where you're showing that you are thinking ahead and very deliberate about what you're doing, right? So we're going to make one more cocktail. This is going to be a Boulevardier, one of my favorite Negroni variations. We're going to be stirring this one. So again, I'll put this down in the center, and we'll be using the recipe that we used at the Hawthorne. So this may differ depending on where you're at. We're going to be using an ounce of vermouth, so Cinzano sweet vermouth, right? So again, I'm not going to bring it up here and then invert it. This is a heavy bottle, but I'm going to pop this up and invert that way and pause my pour before letting everything go. Grabbing my next thing, which is going to be the Wild Turkey 101. I'm going to use 1.5 ounces of Wild Turkey. And then finally, we have an ounce of Campari. The other thing too about measuring, something that Kent Goto, he worked for a long time at the Pegu Club, and he owns Bar Goto now. When I used to go to the Pegu Club every Monday, I would watch him, and I noticed that while a lot of bartenders are going sideways or going in, whatnot, he had that sort of that motion, right? And everything he said was, you're putting everything out, right? Everything is moving towards the guest, right? And that was just a little thought that just really stuck with me, and it just kind of kept everything nice and centered. Just an easy motion like that, or like this, right? So I have those three there. Yeah.
Do you think that all this, because it become an art, the way you move behind the bar, and this is very impressive to see so much confidence and so much make everything really precise and detailed. Do you think all those moves are inspired from the Japanese bartending style and community, because everything is precise over there?
Some of it, yeah, for sure. I mean, I've having been able to have the pleasure of being in Tokyo and seeing some of those bars, you know, where the making of the drink itself is so much a part of the cocktail. Everything is just so incredibly exacting. It really resonated with me. Some of that carries over for sure, and I think some things, I mean, for me, doesn't. You know, for example, some bars will have a very, very specific way of shaking to make the ice move in a certain direction and create a certain texture, right? And
yes,
you know, when we teach these things, we say, hey, you need to shake really hard so that your ice can break down, can aerate, can dilute and chill. If you've got all that, we're good. And in the amount of time that drink is going to sit for a while, you're not necessarily going to notice that much variation from one to another, right? So I'm going to stir this. We're going to put our ice cubes in the glass. I'm going to start with just a few. Do one more. I keep my, and thanks Campari for the sweet bar spoon. I keep the lip, or the sort of spout of the mixing glass pointed towards me and just towards my left. If I'm stirring right-handed clockwise, and you're stirring very quickly, it doesn't really make as much a difference for these very tall mixing glasses, but shorter ones, you'll notice that the liquid in the glass will bow outwards, right, as you're spinning it. And where that spout is, at kind of going this way, is going to be the point where that liquid is at the lowest, right? So you have the least chance of having that spray out, either on you or on someone, right? But with a very tall mixing glass, you don't really have to worry about that as much. But if you're, say, making 2 cocktails in one, things are starting to get a little higher. And same thing, right? In a very natural position. I'm not holding onto the glass because this is a reasonably heavy bottom glass. It stays on the rubber. You may work in bars where these things like to shift around a bit. And what I might advocate for is either holding it from the base, like below where the liquid is. Some would say that you're transferring your body's heat to like the glass and it's changing the cocktail, but like it's the pads of my thumb and middle finger on a very thick piece of glass. So I would venture to say that it's not going to do much. Or you can tilt the glass, you can turn it this way so that the spout is facing out and towards my left, and just kind of rest your thumb on the back side is going to be where you're least likely going to touch the liquid with your hands. That being said, coming out of this quarantine, you may not be able to do this at all. We shall see. And we're going to stir. I'm going to make sure that there's... Go ahead.
When do you know your cocktail is cold enough when you stir it? Is there, how do you teach your team? Is there a specific time? Is there a specific sign when the
I
cocktail is
usually,
ready?
that's like a really hard thing to describe. I mean, I usually start by, like, once I learn how to stir in a consistent way, right? I just count. But then there's all kinds of different ways that can be screwed up, right? The quality of your ice. So if our cold draft machine is on the fritz and is making ice that is not the perfect cubes that we want, that's going to change the amount of time that you need to stir. If your ice has been sitting in your well for a long time, that's going to change the amount of time that you need to chill and dilute this. Thankfully, I mean, I found that stirring has a fairly generous sort of sweet spot where you can sort of exist in and not feel like you've overdone it or underdone it. So we'll do that. And then when we strain any number of different tools, you have like the Hawthorne strainer. You find one that locks into your glass. That will make this a lot easier. Or with these very tall mixing glasses and not as much ice in there, if you start to strain, this ice is going to like eventually just fall forward and a bunch of liquid is going to fly out from all the different holes in your julep strainer. So I found a lot of success with these sort of variations on a Hawthorne strainer that actually fit into the mixing glass itself. And you'll see that it actually will hold the ice in place while still restricting the flow appropriately, right? And then I can pour a nice, clear, steady stream. No bubbles. As I get out towards the end of the flow, I'm going to come in a little closer because I don't want any, I don't want to make like a whole bunch of frothy bubbles or whatnot. I want to preserve the sort of clarity of this thing. Let as much of that liquid out as I can, and I stop, right? And then I put this away. Now time for the garnish. I've pre-cut this. I don't know what it's going to look like. We're touching fruit and then touching, all sorts of different things. So we'll probably have gloves on or whatnot. I apologize that I didn't put any on today, but I'm going to drink these. So I'm going to put my orange peel there. Again, having some thought to this, right? So we get oil on the top. We get oil on the rim, right? I'm touching it with the peel, not my hand. And then we also just put a little bit right there. And I actually don't want the peel to be in this drink. When it's an up drink like this, you're drinking this thing, that peel's just like kind of in your face the whole time. And like, you don't really want to eat this anyways. So we discard most of our twists. I know it makes the drink look very clean, but we hope that our drink making and the way that we've put the drink together and the ingredients that we have specifically chosen for the drink will make this cocktail taste great. Now, when the guest gets that, they will pick the drink up, right? It's facing the right direction too. They'll smell it. It smells like oranges. They'll taste it, and a little bit of that. Wow, that's good. A little bit of that orange peel, that orange oil, like on their lips, and then they'll put that down. And then, like anyone does, they'll be going about their business or whatever, and they'll brush their face or whatnot, and all that oil is on their fingers now, and it just prolongs this sort of aromatic experience about the cocktail, right? So lots of different ways that we have introduced sort of deliberate thought into making drinks. So what can you do at your bar that may not be specifically these motions, right? And even I'm noticing now that like some of the things that I do at the Hawthorne don't work when I'm behind this space. But having that moment where every time you move, think about what people are seeing and what that communicates to that guest, right? Are you facing them and smiling, or is your back turned to 90% of your bar? When you pick up bottles, how do you do it in a way that communicates confidence, right? How do you do it in a way that saves your shoulders and your elbows and whatnot? And then honestly, the big fringe benefit, right, is that if you bartend cleanly, that's less stuff you have to clean up later, right? Less sticky to go to war against. And so that can be a fun competition depending on where you're at. If you're working on a big service mat like this, you can, you know, have everyone save all the liquid in there, and then at the end of the night, see who has the most, right? So
basically, the most important rule is to don't turn your back to the customer as much as possible. And
yeah,
actually, we had a question. Someone just asked, one of our friends who's watching us is asking if you actually could make a cocktail with the same moves that you just showed us without pausing entirely. Is it something you could do if you still have some ice behind the bar?
With a what?
So if you could make a cocktail the same way, make another Margarita or Boulevardier, but without pausing, without breaking, just entirely to see.
Just like making a whole drink.
To see exactly how long it's gonna be for everyone watching us, because everything is so really interesting. And thank you for sharing all those tips and recommendations. It's really important details, but we sometimes forget.
So my wife and son left for the afternoon to go take a walk. So I'm going to drink all of these myself. So I'll make another margarita.
Okay.
It's going to be good. And I'll do it in a cobbler shaker because it'll be a little different. So we'll go at like sort of regular pace, right? And this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build it the way I would do it at the Hawthorne, which is from the bottom up. So the cheapest ingredient first, right? We're going to use our lime juice first, then the 3/4 ounce of Grand Marnier, and then the 2 ounces of Espolòn. That way, if you make a mistake, you're not tossing out, you know, the expensive liquor first, right? So let's start. So put this down this way. I'm going to grab my 3/4 ounce measure of lime, my 3/4 ounce measure of Grand Marnier. Notice that I can like measure this up top and then draw it down right as I'm about to pour. I don't have to keep it down super low. Followed by Espolòn, right? I'm putting that bottle back right as I'm grabbing the next one so that I don't have to reach back a second time. And now I'm going to load my shaker with ice. This is like a cardinal sin, is like picking up your tin to load with ice. I just really don't like that, but it's just too far away from me here. So I'm going to cap that. I'm going to grab my glassware, set that up.
Is that the freezer you got behind?
It's a freezer.
It's a fridge. Okay.
Okay, so I have that. I'm going to take this off here. I always like to put ice in my glass first. This time I'm going to do it. Actually, I have one large ice cube left, so I'm going to do it on a large ice cube. Put the ice in first. That way you aren't dropping ice into a bunch of liquid and having it splash everywhere. We'll get every last bit out. I'm still like learning how to use a cobbler shaker. It's been a lot of fun to sort of try just a very different technique. And I'll put this down. Garnish my cocktail with a little lime wheel. This time I can put it right on top of that ice cube, a little off center, and I'll put it down just like that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Now I just want to drink it, but it's okay. We will drink virtually.
I'll box it up and send it to you. How about
that? I had a question. Thank you very much for showing us all the tips and recommendations. I really like the little touch with the orange oil on the stem of the glass. I think it's some really cool things that we forget sometimes, that all the senses, from the smell, the taste, are very important. Of course, the ambience, the view, and the but all this program that you install, how long does it take for your team to be trained? Because you have a whole training system for your bartenders, correct? So we have to go through the same way to work.
Yeah. Right? So different people will take different amount of times to go through that that program. So everyone that's worked at the Hawthorne, and that includes myself, will start as either a bar back or a host, and you'll work through every position in the bar before you eventually bartend. And by that we mean like make drinks for other people. So someone who has had no restaurant experience whatsoever can come in and probably, if they put their mind to it, like get through that program in a year and a half, 2 years maybe. But obviously most people coming to us have worked somewhere before, have been a server, have been a bartender, have been a bar manager and whatnot. And so that can range anywhere from I was like about 3 months in before I really started bartending there, and other people have done it a little bit faster, and many people have taken 6 to 9 months or so. So it is a lot of time, a lot of repetition to get some of these habits down. And you know, to be honest, the folks that have no experience at all, they benefit from not having any other habits or bad habits to unwind before we teach them sort of our method, right? So it definitely differs from person to person.
Interesting. So how long does your team, so you keep your staff a long time, if I understand, because they have to earn it to be able to be a bartender.
Well, we're very lucky that, I mean, we have created an environment, and this isn't me, but this is the people that are a part of this team. I know some of you are probably watching and you sort of understand this because you guys are essentially inseparable. I hesitate to use the word family because I think that can sometimes become a little insidious in a like restaurant or bar setting, but it's definitely very sort of close bonds that make people really enjoy taking care of others because they feel taken care of by their coworkers, by their managers, and so on and so forth. So we've been very lucky at Hawthorne. We have a number of staff that are, I mean, one that recently just left was since the beginning, so almost 8 years. Others that are hovering in the 2, 3, 4 year range is not uncommon. That said, like many places, I mean, we certainly have a good amount of turnover as well, because this program isn't for everyone, and we've adjusted our language over the years to like try to be very upfront about that and just try to make sure that we're getting the right fit both for the person who wants to train and us, the bar, when we're hiring.
Interesting. But I have one more question for you. I was looking at, so let's say you always saying every time you make a cocktail, you're facing your clients.
Yeah.
So if a new customers come to the bar while you're making the drinks, what would you do? Would you stop making the drinks and give a menu to the customers and acknowledge him, or would you continue to make the drinks and acknowledge him in the same time? Is there like a system in place for that?
Yeah, I mean, it becomes so incredibly subjective based on the situation. You may, you know, really need to finish these drinks and get them out because they've taken a while. And so being able to be making drinks while you're looking up and around gives you that opportunity to make that eye contact, right? Just making eye contact and saying hello or whatnot, that will easily buy you 30 seconds to a minute or more of guests that then know that, okay, I was seen, you know, the guy that's, you know, making the drinks and, you know, is sort of doing all this stuff. He saw me, he acknowledged me, I'm gonna have a seat, and I'm sure that I'm the next thing in line, right? There may be instances where you're just starting to put some drinks together that just popped up, and you know that you can take that 10 seconds to say hello, put water down, give them menus, and then get back to what you're doing, right? So you can kind of, our staff will decide. We don't have hard or fast rules in there, but we want to make sure that every guest, you know, feels like they're acknowledged and heard at every moment, right? And that goes for out on the floor too. You never know when someone might put a credit card down to pay for the bill, or to, you know, 1 second they don't need another cocktail, but then they take one sip and that changes entirely. So having that awareness and being able to identify what's going on, so that the minute someone looks up to say like, I wonder where my server is, and before they can even finish that thought, someone has made eye contact with them from across the room and is already heading over to help them with whatever they might need, right? So that anticipation is another quality that we find when we're able to really be deliberate about the way that we move about the space.
You always make eye contact with your clients because the way you're always facing the client. I think we have a few questions coming up here. Hey, Jared, in the spirit of Cinco de Mayo, is there a certain method you have towards making a sugar or salt rim? Could you touch on sugar or salt rim, or and a clean way of doing that? So what would be your process to add some salt or sugar on the rim of a glass? Do you have a technique
you know what?
to share with
I really should have thought about that. Yeah, I mean, the way that we would normally do that is we have a dish. This one is far too small. But we'll have a dish that will have, you know, salt in. It actually looks really nice, not in one of those like 3-piece salt rimmers that I think most of us have. And I mean, we use one at the Hawthorne as well that stays below the level of the bar, sort of out of sight. But if you're inside of guests, like a dish with the salt in it, the salt should be clean. I've seen some places that will do it like to order every single time because maybe they don't make as many of these margaritas. I think if you're working in a bar on a day like Cinco de Mayo, you're probably going to need to have a more volume-oriented solution. But just not dipping the glass in lime juice and then dipping it in the sugar and then, you know, or the salt, and that makes like a bunch of chunks and it's like dripping down the sides, right? Rather, what we like to do is we'll take like a piece of garnish, right, or like a lime wedge or whatever, and we'll just lightly like just wipe just the outer rim, just along the top, just the outer rim of that glass. And then when you drop it into the salt or sugar, assuming that your glass is clean and polished, the only moisture is like right on that outside lip. So you won't have any salt that will cling to the inside of your glass. And so it'll just be this nice thin line around the outside. Then when you strain your cocktail, and it's not going to like randomly take bits of salt and whatnot in with it and change the way that drink tastes. One strategy that I've seen as well that looks really, really good is if you have time in advance, you can sugar rim or salt rim glasses. Some bars will use like just a little bit of simple syrup. You can just brush on like half of the rim of a coupe, and then just get a really nice beaded edge there, and then you just put it in the glass chiller or the fridge, and it forms like this nice sort of crust. Those are nice because those will persist over the course of time that you're drinking that drink, right? With a normal salt rim, you kind of rotate the glass each time you take a sip, and then that's all gone. But this will like actually last a little bit longer, which is super cool. So those are a couple different ways that you can sort of jazz up that and just really kind of apply a bit of polish. It's not the same thing, but related. Like for example, at the Hawthorne, we hand stuff blue cheese olives. Like, so we put blue cheese in the olives by hand. We used to do it like around back, but we found it was actually kind of funny. If somebody ordered a martini with blue cheese olives, we would get it out like essentially in front of them. You put a pair of gloves on and you stuff the olives to order and then put it all away. We certainly have the luxury of having a lot more time than I think a lot of other bars do. But it is definitely kind of an eye-opening thing for a lot of guests that say like, oh, like, yeah, that's right. Someone or something has to do that. Like they don't just come naturally, you know? So
how many blue cheese leaves would you put in one serving, one drink?
We do 2 olives per drink. And if somebody wants extra, we'll happily like provide a sidecar with another 2. But I mean, if they continue to want olives, then I guess they can have as many as they want. So.
That becomes a snack, no more garnish.
Yeah, I know, right? There's like a fine line, right? At what point you should really just buy the appetizer that's a bowl of olives.
Anyway, I think we come to the end of this session. Yeah. I'd like to know if the friends or folks following us right now had any more questions for Jared.
And you can always people know how to get in touch with me. You can find me on Facebook, certainly Instagram as well, or email. Just feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer questions about this or really anything else. It's just been good to stay in touch with a lot of folks in the industry while we've all been off. So,
Jared, thank you so much for showing us all your way to work behind the bar. This is very impressive. I can't wait for everything to reopen and sit down at your bar and enjoy a good cocktail with you. Thank you for everyone for following us today. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Once again, my name is Xavier Herit. I'm the brand ambassador for Grand Marnier. We were very excited to partner with the Portland Cocktail Week to present this new educational programming. Excuse my French. There's going to be more events coming up, so stay tuned every Tuesday and Thursday. Of course, also thank you so much, Jared Sadoian from Boston. As we say, santé.
Yes,
or cheers. And I hope to see you very soon. Thank you, everyone.
Take care, friends.
Bye.
All right, and live stream is out. Thank you. Thank you very much, guys. That was fantastic. I was mesmerized. What did you say? Sorry.
I thought that went okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it went well. No.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was wonderful. You guys are amazing.
Do we know how much audience did we have on Facebook?
We were averaging about 130, 140 at any given moment, and sometimes people come in and leave. And I think once people share this a little bit after it's lived there, we'll see that number probably. I mean, we've seen that number go up tenfold. So,
wow,
awesome. Well, listen, I'm going to jump to my next live streaming. Yeah. I have to make some margaritas. Jared, really great job. Really great job, man. Thank you so much. I'm sure we see each other very soon. And
yes.
I used to work for Daniel Boulud for 7 years in a 2-Michelin-star restaurant. So everything you said was how to work the same way. So it's an art, and I appreciate to see people caring as much as you do. So thank you very much again.